It's Halloween time again, and to me, no franchise represents the spirit of Halloween more than the Universal Monsters. Just think about how often this time of year you see people dressed up as these characters or something referencing them. These movies are classics, and to this day, with some of them being almost 100 years old, they still hold up and set the perfect atmosphere for a cool October night. So today, I'm going to take a look at the lineup of monsters themselves and rank them from my personal least favorite to favorite. The Hunchback of Notre Dame from 1923 is sometimes considered the first Universal monster movie. In my opinion, however, I feel like it definitely sticks out from the rest. You pretty much never see Quasimoto listed with the rest of the bunch whenever the monsters are brought up. He's not even really a monster, he's just a disfigured misfit. I guess you could say that about some of the ones classified as official monsters, but still, Quasimoto isn't really antagonistic and is more of a tragic protagonist. It also comes so much earlier before the start of the horror cycle that began with Dracula in 1931. He only appears in one film and never gets the chance to interact with any of the others. There are plenty of hunchbacks in the other movies, which can be seen as possible tributes to Quasi, but it's never actually him. For these reasons, I'm going to have to put him last, more of an honorable mention than anything else.
The Bride of Frankenstein.
The movie, Bride of Frankenstein, is no doubt an iconic classic and is probably the best film of the whole franchise. The actual bride herself, however, is only in the movie for less than 5 minutes, and it's at the very end. She doesn't even have any lines of dialogue, just screams and hisses. She has a great look, and the final scene is the film's best, but I can't really put her higher than anyone else with how little of a part she actually has. The Mummy is kind of hard to place because there's actually two main mummies within the Universal movies. The original is Imhotep, played by Boris Karloff. He gives a good performance, speaking in a slow, hypnotizing voice. Karloff, as always, is great, but the movie surrounding him is very slow and honestly one of my least favorites when it comes to the classics. The second mummy, Karis, is more traditional in that he's a slow-walking undead corpse wrapped in bandages. When people think of a classic mummy, it's often this one that pops in their mind. He was also the one who had many sequels which helped popularize the image of the horror mummy. The problem with him is he doesn't really have too much of a character. He never speaks and is pretty much always used as a pawn by someone else to achieve their own goals. Like the Bride, the look is iconic, but nothing about him gives you much to grab onto. Because Karloff's mummy was only in one subpar movie, and Karis is a pretty bland character, I don't think they stack up with the rest of the list. Putting this guy this high on the list might make me seem like a hypocrite. His original film came out before Dracula, and the other one was a remake released almost 20 years later. No sequels, no interaction with the other characters. It can also be argued that, like Quasimoto, he's more of a tragic character than a true monster. But the Phantom is too iconic of a character to put any lower. Both Lon Chaney and Claude Rains both give great, although very different, portrayals of the Phantom. His violence and lust for revenge, combined with his desire for love, makes him much closer to characters like Frankenstein's Monster and the Wolfman than Quasimoto, which to me makes him fit right in as a classic monster. Also, when you look up group pictures of the monsters, he's included a lot more than you'd think, with both versions popping up. He's only at 6 because the rest of the list are more integral parts of the brand, but he definitely deserves to stand alongside them.
I am Dracula.
The original monster, Dracula, is the only one who's pure evil. Everyone else has at least a few redeeming qualities or elements of tragedy to them, but not Dracula. Literally called the Prince of Darkness, he is essentially the devil. This sets him apart from everyone else and is what makes him so entertaining to watch. He knows he's evil and he loves it. His place in pop culture is mostly due to the iconic performance of Bela Lugosi, who pretty much shaped the modern image of the vampire. Every portrayal of a vampire afterwards owes something to Lugosi. I'm not the biggest fan of the original movie. In fact, I'd place it on the lower end if I was ranking the films themselves. But everything with Lugosi himself is fantastic. Some people may have Dracula higher, but he never really got his own series to keep coming back with. There were sequels like Daughter and Son of Dracula, but both are pretty lackluster, and Daughter of Dracula doesn't even have the Count himself in it, since it takes place after his death. He was played by John Carradine in House of Frankenstein and House of Dracula, but it feels like a different character pretty much. Lugosi finally returned in Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, and was great in that too, but was forced into a much more cartoonish role to match with the comedic nature of the leads. Overall, a great first performance, but lacking so much in his other ones that I don't really consider him among my favorites. The last official monster of the group, he definitely feels removed from everyone else and never got the chance to join the crossovers. With the others debuting in the early 30s and 40s, and the creature's first film being released in 1954, He fits more into the 50s atomic monsters like Godzilla or the giant ants from them. Still, he is officially counted as a universal monster, and with all that being said, I like him a lot. Even though he never speaks or even changes his expression, you can still tell what he's thinking a lot of the time. His pining for the female lead is very reminiscent of King Kong, although since he isn't a giant, they're able to pull off more interactions between them. He's also very sympathetic. He's very likely one of the last of his kind, and his home is being invaded, so it makes sense he would defend himself. You almost root for him to get the girl, and when he meets its end, it's pretty upsetting. Even though he survives for the sequels, he's probably better off dead. He's captured and experimented on multiple times before being mutated into a human-like form, and essentially losing the ability to live in the water he once called home. It's no wonder why so many people identify with the creature. He's a very sympathetic monster who's punished simply for existing in a world that is afraid of him. Another one where his ranking is mostly based on one performance, but that performance is among the best in all of the movies. And it's a mostly vocal performance too. Claude Rains as Jack Griffin is maniacal and so evil it's actually hilarious. Yet he still remains somewhat sympathetic, as it's implied the serum that turned him invisible also turned him insane. It's so much fun watching him cause chaos and destruction, and how delighted he is doing it, that we don't really want him to stop. Invisibility is also the creepiest superpower, so it makes sense that a maniac like this would revel in it. Although this did spawn a franchise, all the other films starred other invisible people, only some of them even related to Jack Griffin. Not really counting them, because this is the Invisible Man, and it's the one that comes to people's minds when it's mentioned. Sure, he's only in one movie, but he makes one hell of an impact in that movie. Perhaps the main character of the franchise, making the most appearances at 8 movies, Frankenstein's Monster is the original experiment gone wrong. Created by a madman and immediately shunned by society, you can't help but pity him. From the moment of his birth, he's feared by pretty much everyone he meets and they want him dead, while all he seeks is kindness. Naturally, he immediately lashes out in the world, committing murders and raising hell. But even through all this, he doesn't become evil incarnate like Dracula. He still attempts to find friendship and even finds it a couple times, but it is always taken away from him.
We belong dead.
He is simply not meant for this world, yet he is cursed by being pretty much immortal, doomed to keep coming back for more suffering. The films he stars in, particularly the original Karloff trilogy, are among the best and most influential ever. And not just in this specific set of movies, but cinema in general. One could argue he's probably the most iconic movie monster ever. This is in no small part, of course, to the work of Boris Karloff, who through limited dialogue and body language is able to be so sympathetic while also intimidating. If Frankenstein's monster isn't the main character of the Universal Monsters, then Larry Talbot, aka the Wolfman, surely is. He's the only monster who's able to be both a protagonist and an antagonist. As Larry, he's just a charming and decent guy who just wants to protect those closest to him. As the Wolfman, he's a ravenous beast who just wants to tear into everyone he can get his claws on. Like the last monster, he's just a poor soul stuck with an awful curse, but the difference is we knew the man Larry was before he became a monster, and it's sad to see him doing everything he can to protect everyone else, yet it always fails. In the multiple movies he appears in, he's always trying to find some cure for his lycanthropy, while at the same time falling in love. Usually neither of these ends very well, and by the time the movie's over, Larry and his lady are dead, yet he is the one cursed to keep coming back. He does finally get a happy ending once, although that's immediately undone in the next movie where he's inexplicably a werewolf again. Really, he's my favorite for one reason: Lon Chaney Jr. He just portrays Larry as such a sad guy who just wants to be normal again and get rid of the monster inside of him. It's impossible not to root for him. He's also the only one who never had anyone else step into the role, because he is the Wolfman. This is also part of why we as an audience grow such a strong connection to him. He's basically the Tony Stark of this universe, the one who connects everything together. Alright guys, that's going to do it for this video, ranking the Universal Monsters. Just let me know down in the comments below if you agree with my ranking, what you would change, what you disagreed with. I just want to say thank you, as always, for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like button and subscribe if you want to see more content like this. Thanks for watching, I'll see you next time.